Remove him. The words echoed across the boardroom before anyone had the courage to breathe. More than 60 executives, investors, attorneys, and media representatives sat around the massive mahogany conference table overlooking downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the sun. Television crews adjusted their cameras. Photographers prepared for the moment everyone had been waiting for. A $900 million contract sat in the center of the table. The largest deal in the company's history. The deal that would make headlines across the country by sunset. The deal that would cement my wife's place among the most successful executives in America. And somehow, despite everything happening in that room, Monica Brooks was staring directly at me. Not the contract, not the investors, not the cameras. Me. Her husband. Her expression hardened. I recognized that look. I had seen it growing more frequently during the last 2 years. It was the look she reserved for people she believed were beneath her. Unfortunately, I had slowly become one of them. "What are you doing here?" she asked. The room fell quiet. Several people turned toward me. I remained seated. Calm. "I came to support you." A few executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Monica laughed. Not a warm laugh. Not a playful laugh. The kind of laugh designed to embarrass someone. "Support me?" she repeated. A few people chuckled. She looked around the room. "You hear that?" More laughter followed. I simply folded my hands. The cameras continued recording. The photographers sensed tension. Several immediately began taking pictures. Monica took a slow step forward. Her white designer suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Every detail of her appearance had been carefully planned. Every detail designed to project power, success, status, control. Then she looked down at my navy suit. The same suit I had worn to dozens of corporate events. The same suit I happened to like. Her eyes narrowed. "You couldn't even buy something new for today." A few people smiled. Others looked away. I said nothing. She continued. "This is the most important day of my career." Her voice carried throughout the room. "The biggest contract this company has ever signed." She paused, then smiled. "And somehow you still managed to show up looking like you're attending a neighborhood church fundraiser." Several people laughed harder this time. The words didn't bother me. What bothered me was watching the room slowly decide whether they should laugh too. Watching adults follow whoever appeared most powerful. Watching people abandon their principles because it was easier. Monica turned toward the executives. "You know what amazes me?" Nobody answered. She didn't expect them to. People see someone sitting quietly and assume they're deep. More laughter. She pointed toward me. "Trust me. Silence isn't always wisdom." The room erupted. A few investors nearly spilled their drinks. One attorney covered his mouth. Another executive shook his head uncomfortably. Still, I remained calm. Monica smiled. She thought she was winning. She always mistook silence for weakness. The chairman of the company, Richard Halstead, sat quietly near the head of the table. His expression never changed. He simply watched, observing, waiting. Monica didn't notice. She was enjoying herself too much. "You know what's funny?" she continued. "I spent years building my career." She placed one hand on the contract. "Years earning respect." She looked back at me. And Nathaniel still believes showing up is the same thing as contributing. The room became quieter. Some people were beginning to feel uncomfortable. The humiliation had gone on too long. Even they could see it, but Monica couldn't, because success had slowly convinced her that being admired made her right. I watched her carefully. The woman standing before me wasn't the woman I had married. The woman I married once believed gratitude mattered, loyalty mattered, character mattered. Now she measured people differently. Money, influence, recognition, visibility. Things that looked valuable. Things that disappeared faster than most people realized. A photographer's flash exploded. Monica adjusted her posture, enjoying the attention. Then she said the one thing that caused the entire room to freeze. "I honestly don't know why you're even here." The silence that followed felt heavy. A few people shifted in their seats. Monica continued, "You have nothing to do with this company." Her eyes locked onto mine. "Nothing to do with this deal." Another pause. "Nothing to do with my success." The words hung in the air. For the first time, even the people laughing stopped laughing. Because something about the way she said it felt cruel, deliberate, personal. I remained calm. I simply looked at her, then I smiled slightly. That seemed to irritate her even more. Why are you smiling? I shrugged. No reason. Her jaw tightened. The room felt tense. Unstable, like something important was happening beneath the surface and nobody understood what it was. Monica suddenly turned toward the security team stationed near the entrance. Two large men immediately straightened. Please escort him out. The room went completely silent. Nobody moved. Even the cameras seemed frozen. One of the security officers hesitated. He looked uncertain. Monica pointed directly at me. I said, remove him. The officer took a step forward. Then another. The entire room watched. Nobody spoke. Nobody intervened. Until a calm voice shattered the silence. That won't be necessary. Every head turned. Richard Halstead slowly stood. The chairman rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. Power had a way of speaking for itself. The security officers immediately stopped moving. Monica blinked. Confused. Richard? He adjusted his jacket. His expression remained perfectly neutral. Then he looked directly at the security team. Mr. Brooks has every right to be here. The room froze. Executives exchanged glances. Investors frowned. Several attorneys immediately became interested. Monica laughed nervously. Of course he can stay if he wants. Richard didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't look away. Something about his expression made the room feel colder, more serious, more dangerous. For the first time all afternoon, uncertainty appeared in Monica's eyes. Only for a second. Then it disappeared. She straightened her shoulders, recovered her confidence, and returned her attention to the contract. The cameras repositioned. The investors settled back into their seats. The attorneys organized the documents. The photographers prepared themselves. The $900 million agreement sat waiting at the center of the table. Monica picked up the pen. The room held its breath, and Richard Halstead quietly glanced in my direction. A glance so brief, almost nobody noticed it. Almost nobody. But I did. Because I knew exactly what it meant. In less than 10 minutes. Every person in that room was about to discover who I really was. And nothing would ever be the same again. The strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives all at once. People imagine it as a single moment. One decision. One cruel sentence. One dramatic event. But most of the time, betrayal arrives quietly. It grows. Slowly. Almost invisibly. By the time you finally recognize it, the damage has already been done. As Monica stood at the front of that boardroom preparing to sign the biggest contract of her career, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman she used to be. The woman I had fallen in love with. 20 years earlier, neither of us had money. Neither of us had influence. Neither of us had connections. We had dreams. That was all. I still remember the tiny apartment we shared after getting married. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained. The heating system barely worked. The refrigerator made strange noises every night. Most people would have hated living there. For us, it felt like a palace, because we had each other. Back then, Monica wasn't obsessed with luxury. She wasn't chasing status. She wasn't competing with everyone around her. She simply wanted a chance to prove herself, a chance to build a better future. And I believed in her, even when nobody else did. When she decided to pursue advanced business certifications, we couldn't afford them. The tuition cost more than we had in savings. She nearly gave up. I refused to let that happen. So I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I managed operations for a logistics company. At night, I drove delivery routes across the city. Some weeks I barely slept. But every paycheck went toward her education. I never considered it a sacrifice. I considered it an investment in someone I loved. Years later, she would stand in boardrooms negotiating contracts worth hundreds of millions. But very few people knew where that journey began. It began with exhaustion. It began with sacrifice. It began with 2 people sharing a dream. I still remember the night she received her first promotion. She came running into our apartment carrying a letter. Her hands were shaking. Tears streamed down her face. I got it. I laughed. Pulled her into my arms. Spun her around the kitchen. For nearly an hour, we celebrated with cheap takeout and sparkling water because we couldn't afford champagne. At one point, she grabbed my hand, looked directly into my eyes, and said something I never forgot. "One day we're going to look back at this and laugh." I smiled. She continued, "And when success comes, we'll enjoy it together." Together. That word used to mean something. Over the years, I helped her prepare for interviews, stayed awake reviewing presentations, listened to speeches, practiced negotiations, corrected documents, encouraged her after failures, celebrated her victories. When she doubted herself, I reminded her how capable she was. When she wanted to quit, I pushed her forward. When others criticized her, I stood beside her, not because I expected anything in return, because that's what partners do. At least that's what I believed. The first signs of change appeared after she became a senior executive. The difference wasn't dramatic, not at first. Small things. Subtle things. Easy to ignore, comma. One evening we attended a networking event. I wore a suit I liked. Simple. Professional. Comfortable. Monica looked me over and frowned. "You're wearing that?" I looked down. "What's wrong with it?" She sighed. "It's just not the image." The image. That was the first time I heard her use that phrase. I laughed it off. She didn't. As her career continued rising, that phrase became increasingly common. "It's not the image. That's not the image. We need a better image." At first she was talking about branding, marketing, corporate positioning. Eventually she started talking about people, including me. One evening she spent nearly 30 minutes criticizing the watch I wore. Another time she complained about my car, then my haircut, then my shoes, then my hobbies. Nothing was ever directly insulting, just enough to make her point. Enough to remind me that I no longer fit the world she was entering. The higher she climbed, the more she seemed to resent anything ordinary, including the man who had helped her get there. At business dinners, she often interrupted me. At charity galas, she introduced me as an afterthought. At networking events, she left me standing alone while she spoke to executives. People noticed. I noticed. But I said nothing, because I kept hoping the woman I married was still there, hidden beneath the pressure, hidden beneath the ambition, hidden beneath the success. For a long time I convinced myself things would improve. Then something happened that changed my perspective. We attended an industry conference in New York. Hundreds of executives were present. Investors, CEOs, board members. Monica was excited. She spent weeks preparing. As we entered the venue, a group of senior executives approached us. One of them immediately extended his hand, but not toward Monica, toward me. "Nathaniel, good to see you again." The man smiled warmly. Several others greeted me the same way. Monica looked confused. After they left, she turned toward me. "How do you know those people?" I shrugged. "We've met before." She stared at me, comma. "Where?" "Various places." She frowned. The answer irritated her. I could tell, but she quickly dismissed it, just like she dismissed everything else. A few months later, another incident occurred. A luxury gift basket arrived at our house. It came from a CEO Monica desperately wanted to meet. Inside was a handwritten note, thanking me for my guidance. Monica read it twice, then 3 times. "What exactly did you help him with?" I smiled. "A business decision." "What business decision?" "Just a business decision." She rolled her eyes. For her, the explanation wasn't enough. But instead of becoming curious, she became dismissive. She convinced herself the answer couldn't possibly matter. That was the problem. She stopped looking deeper. She stopped asking questions. She started assuming. Assuming she knew everything. Assuming she understood everyone. Assuming success made her perspective correct. Meanwhile, my own responsibilities continued growing. Private meetings, confidential calls, investment reviews, strategic decisions, most of which I handled quietly, most of which nobody knew about, exactly how I preferred it. Recognition never interested me. Results did. Impact did. Character did. Things that lasted longer than applause. Things that survived after titles disappeared. Unfortunately, Monica had begun believing the opposite. Then came the conversation I still remember more clearly than any other. It happened 6 months before the contract signing. We were sitting in our living room. The house was quiet. The city lights glowed beyond the windows. Monica had just returned from another business trip. She looked exhausted, frustrated, distant. For nearly an hour we barely spoke. Then finally she broke the silence. I think we've become different people. I looked at her. What makes you say that? She hesitated. Only briefly. Then she said it. I've outgrown you. The words landed harder than she realized. Not because they were angry, because they were honest. Karma. At least honest from her perspective. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then I asked a simple question. Do you really believe success determines someone's value? She stared at me. Then slowly shook her head. No. I waited. She continued. It reveals it. The room became silent. I remember looking at the woman sitting across from me, trying to find the person I once knew, trying to find the woman who used to dream beside me, the woman who once promised we would enjoy success together. Instead, I found someone else. Someone who measured worth differently. Someone who had forgotten where she came from. Someone who no longer saw me at all. A few moments later she stood, grabbed her bag, and walked away, without another word, without looking back, without realizing she had just broken something that might never be repaired. Months passed. The distance between us continued growing. Then the phone call arrived. The call that would change everything. It came late in the evening. Private number. I already knew who it was before answering. Good evening, Richard. The chairman's voice came through the speaker. Calm. Controlled. Nathaniel. I walked toward the window overlooking the city. What can I do for you? There was a brief pause. Then Richard spoke. Everything is ready. The lights of downtown Chicago stretched across the darkness below. Countless people living their lives, unaware of what was about to happen, unaware that years of secrets were approaching their final chapter. Richard continued. The board approved the final documents. I nodded. Good. Another pause. Then the words that would echo in my mind all night. Tomorrow changes everything. For several seconds I simply stared through the glass, watching the city below, thinking about Monica, thinking about the promises we once made, thinking about everything that had brought us to this point. Then I quietly answered, I know. And for the first time in years I wondered whether the truth would set us free, or destroy what remained of our marriage forever. The room felt different after Richard's phone call, not because anyone else sensed what was coming, because I did. As I sat quietly near the back of the boardroom, watching Monica prepare for the signing ceremony, I realized something surprising. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even interested in proving anyone wrong. I was simply tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of watching people judge worth based on appearances. Tired of seeing respect handed out according to titles and income. Most of all, I was tired of being invisible to the person who once knew me best. At the front of the room, Monica adjusted the sleeves of her white designer jacket. The photographers were everywhere now. Television crews positioned themselves for the perfect angle. Several reporters whispered among themselves. Everyone wanted to witness history. A $900 million agreement didn't happen every day, especially not one that had taken nearly 4 years to negotiate. The energy in the room felt electric, excited, victorious. Monica loved every second of it. She smiled for photographs, shook hands, accepted congratulations, enjoyed the admiration flowing toward her from every direction. For years she had worked toward moments like this. And to be fair, she had earned much of it. She had worked hard, sacrificed, pushed herself relentlessly. The tragedy wasn't that Monica had become successful. The tragedy was that somewhere along the way, she began believing success made her more valuable than other people. That was the mistake. And mistakes built on pride rarely stay hidden forever. A member of the media team stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready. The room immediately quieted. Chairs stopped moving. Conversations ended. Phones disappeared. Everyone focused on the signing table. Monica smiled confidently. Richard Halstead remained seated near the head of the table. His expression revealed nothing. The senior attorneys organized the final paperwork. Several investors leaned forward expectantly. One of them whispered, "This is going to be all over the news tonight." Another nodded. "Huge deal." Monica approached the table. The cameras immediately followed. Flash after flash illuminated the room. She picked up the ceremonial pen, the same pen specially prepared for the signing. A symbol. A celebration. A moment designed for headlines. She looked toward the cameras, then toward the executives, then toward the investors. Finally, she smiled. I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Applause filled the room. Monica continued. This agreement represents years of dedication, sacrifice, and vision. More applause. She glanced around proudly. This company has entered a new era. The room erupted again. Investors smiled. Board members nodded. Reporters continued taking notes. Monica positioned the pen above the contract. Then a voice interrupted. One moment. The room froze. Monica stopped moving. Several people looked confused. Richard Halstead slowly stood. The chairman rarely interrupted public events. When he did, people listened. Immediately, Monica lowered the pen. Richard? His expression remained calm. Professional. Measured. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, there is an important matter that requires attention. The room became silent. The excitement that had filled the boardroom seconds earlier instantly transformed into curiosity. Investors exchanged glances. Attorneys looked confused. Even Monica appeared uncertain. What matter? She asked. Richard folded his hands. The final approval process. Several executives frowned. One investor spoke first. I thought approval was already complete. Richard nodded slowly. It is. The investor looked confused. Then what's the issue? A brief silence followed. Then Richard answered. There is one signature still required. Whispers immediately spread throughout the room. One signature. Several attorneys began reviewing documents. Others looked toward the board members. Monica frowned. I don't understand. Richard calmly continued. Company policy requires final authorization from the controlling owner before any transaction of this size can be completed. The room became noticeably quieter. Monica blinked. The controlling owner. Richard nodded. Correct. A board member shifted uncomfortably. One investor raised an eyebrow. Several reporters immediately started writing. Something unexpected was happening. Something none of them knew. Monica looked genuinely confused now. I thought ownership was divided among shareholders. Richard remained calm. It is. Another pause. However, one shareholder maintains controlling authority. The room exploded with whispers. People began talking over each other. Questions appeared everywhere. Who? When? How? Several executives looked stunned. Others appeared concerned. Monica laughed nervously. Well, whoever they are, let's get them on the phone. A few people chuckled. Richard didn't. Instead, he looked toward the entrance, then spoke quietly. That won't be necessary. The room fell silent again. Every eye followed his gaze. The boardroom doors opened. A man entered carrying several thick black binders. Michael Carter, lead corporate counsel. The moment he walked inside, the atmosphere changed. Even the reporters sensed it. Something serious was happening. Michael approached the front of the room. Without speaking, he placed the binders on the conference table. The sound echoed throughout the silence. Monica stared at the documents. What is all this? Michael looked toward Richard. Richard answered, evidence. The room became still. Completely still. Richard slowly turned toward the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, many years ago this corporation underwent a restructuring process. Several board members nodded. They remembered. Richard continued. At the time, a private investment group acquired controlling interest. Confused expressions spread throughout the room. Some executives clearly had no idea what he was talking about. Others seemed to be realizing something. Monica crossed her arms. Richard, what does this have to do with today's signing? Richard looked directly at her. Everything. The answer landed heavily. Even Monica stopped speaking. Richard walked toward the binders, opened one, removed several documents, then held them up. The controlling owner has approved every major acquisition. Page. The controlling owner financed multiple expansion projects. Another page. The controlling owner protected thousands of jobs during economic downturns. Another page. The controlling owner personally funded strategic investments responsible for more than 70% of our growth. The room stared in disbelief. Whoever this person was, they clearly weren't just another investor. They were the company, the foundation, the architect, the invisible force behind everything. Monica looked stunned. So who is it? Richard smiled slightly. The first smile anyone had seen from him all afternoon. Then he spoke the sentence that changed everything. The controlling owner is already in this room. Silence. Absolute silence. People immediately began looking around. Executives scanned the room. Investors turned their heads. Reporters searched for clues. Monica followed their gaze. Her eyes landed on board members, senior investors, attorneys, anyone who looked powerful, anyone who looked important, anyone except me, because in her mind, it couldn't possibly be me. A billionaire? Maybe. A famous investor? Possibly. A tech founder? Certainly, but not Nathaniel. Not the quiet husband she had humiliated 30 minutes earlier. Richard allowed the silence to grow, allowed curiosity to become tension, allowed tension to become suspense. Then he slowly turned. Toward the back of the room. Toward me. One by one, heads followed. The movement spread through the audience like a wave. Investors turned. Executives turned. Attorneys turned. Reporters turned. Then Monica turned. Our eyes met. For a moment she looked confused, then amused, then confused again. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. Wait. Nobody else laughed. Richard's expression never changed. Monica looked around, searching for someone to explain the joke. Karma. Nobody did. Her smile slowly disappeared. The room remained silent. Michael Carter opened another binder, removed the ownership records, then placed them directly in front of Monica. She looked down. Read the first page, then the second, then the third. The color immediately drained from her face. Her hands began trembling. The room watched in silence, because every document contained the same name. Every signature, every approval, every acquisition, every controlling agreement. Every investment authorization, every strategic decision. One name. Nathaniel Brooks. My name. And for the first time in years, Monica truly saw me. The pen slipped from her fingers and hit the table with a sound so loud it seemed to echo through the entire room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. For several seconds, the only sound inside the boardroom was Monica's uneven breathing. Her eyes remained locked on the document spread across the table, page after page, signature after signature, year after year. Every major decision, every acquisition, every expansion. Every investment. My name was everywhere. The realization was hitting her in waves. The company she believed she understood. The empire she believed she knew. The deal she believed belonged entirely to her success. All of it had been connected to me from the very beginning. Monica slowly looked up. The confidence that had filled her face earlier was gone. The woman who had commanded the room only minutes before now looked completely lost. Nathaniel. Her voice barely worked. I met her eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking through me. She was actually looking at me. Richard Halstead quietly stepped aside. The room's attention shifted completely. Not toward the contract. Not toward the investors. Toward me. One executive who had laughed earlier suddenly looked embarrassed. Another lowered his eyes. Several board members stood up. A few investors approached respectfully. The atmosphere had changed entirely. Not because people suddenly liked me, because they finally understood who I was. Monica stared at the documents again, then back at me. No. She shook her head. No, this doesn't make sense. Michael Carter calmly slid another folder toward her. These are the original ownership agreements. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were records dating back nearly 15 years. Years before she became a senior executive. Years before the company became a major player. Years before anyone outside a small circle knew my involvement. Every page confirmed the same truth. I had never been an employee. I had never been an ordinary shareholder. I had quietly built the foundation beneath everything. The room remained silent as Monica continued reading. I could almost see the memories forming inside her mind. Every strange phone call, every unexplained meeting, every executive who greeted me with unusual respect, every powerful person who somehow seemed to know my name, all the clues she had ignored, all the signs she had dismissed, all the warnings she never stopped to consider. They finally made sense. Tears began forming in her eyes. Not because of the money, not because of the ownership, because she realized something far more painful. She had spent years judging a man she never truly understood. A reporter finally broke the silence. Mr. Brooks, are you saying you've been the controlling owner this entire time? I nodded. Yes. The room erupted. Questions came from every direction. Camera flashes exploded. Reporters rushed forward. Investors began talking over one another. Several executives looked completely stunned. Richard allowed the chaos to continue for a moment before raising his hand. The room gradually settled. Then he spoke. For more than a decade, Nathaniel Brooks has chosen to remain private. He looked around the room. Many people assume leadership is loud. He paused. They assume power demands attention. His eyes shifted toward me. Mr. Brooks proved otherwise. Several board members nodded. One elderly investor smiled. I've worked with Nathaniel for 8 years. He looked directly at Monica, and I've never met anyone more committed to protecting people than him. The room grew quiet again. Monica lowered her eyes. The shame was visible now, painfully visible. She slowly stood, then turned toward me. The cameras immediately focused on her. Nathaniel. Her voice cracked. I didn't know. I remained calm. I know. Fresh tears appeared. I swear I didn't know. I nodded. I know that too. The room watched carefully. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Monica took a step closer. Then another. I was wrong. The words came out slowly, painfully. I was arrogant. Silence. I judged you. Another silence. I treated you like you were less than me. The room remained completely still. Then she said the one thing nobody expected. I forgot who stood beside me when I had nothing. Her voice broke completely. Years of pride seemed to collapse all at once. For a moment nobody spoke. Then I finally stood. Every eye followed me. Every camera focused on me. But none of that mattered. The only person I was looking at was Monica. The woman I had once loved more than anything. The woman who had slowly stopped seeing me. I never cared about the recognition. My voice remained calm. Steady. I never cared whether people knew what I owned. The room listened carefully. I never cared whether strangers respected me. I paused, then looked directly into Monica's eyes. But I cared whether you did. The words hit harder than any speech. Harder than any accusation. Harder than any act of revenge. A tear rolled down Monica's face. The room remained silent. Because everyone understood the truth. This was never about money. Never about power. Never about ownership. It was about respect. The one thing success could never buy. I continued. When we were young, we promised we'd face life together. Monica lowered her head. I remember. I didn't need you to admire me. Another pause. I only needed you to remember me. The tears came freely now. Not only from Monica. Several people in the room looked emotional. Even some reporters stopped writing. The truth had become impossible to ignore. Success hadn't destroyed our marriage. Pride had. Richard finally stepped forward. The contract is ready. The words brought everyone back to reality. The $900 million agreement still waited on the table. The deal that had started everything. Michael Carter placed the document in front of me. I picked up the pen. The same pen Monica had dropped earlier. The room watched, completely silent. Then I signed. The cameras flashed. The reporters erupted. History had officially been made. After a moment, I slid the contract toward Monica. She looked at it, then at me, then slowly signed her name. The deal was complete. Applause filled the room. Investors celebrated. Executives congratulated one another. The media rushed to file their stories. But none of that mattered. Because the most important thing that happened that day wasn't the contract. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the headlines. It was the lesson hidden beneath all of it. A lesson every person in that room would remember long after the $900 million was forgotten. Never measure someone's worth by what they choose not to display. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is carrying the greatest story. And sometimes the person standing beside you is far more extraordinary than you ever imagined. The most shocking part of this story was never the $900 million contract. It was the realization that the person Monica underestimated the most was the very person who helped build the foundation beneath her success. Too often people judge others by titles, appearances, bank accounts, or public recognition, but real character cannot be measured by wealth. Real character is revealed through loyalty, sacrifice, humility, and integrity when nobody is watching. Nathaniel never needed the room's applause. He never needed headlines, attention, or validation. The only thing he wanted was respect from the person he loved. Sadly, many people don't recognize true value until they are faced with the consequences of overlooking it. Remember this: success can open doors, but character